So, are you ready to prep yet? If not, on my 30th episode, I'm here to reinforce all the reasons why you should. Hi, it's the Urban Lady Prepper. Needless to say, the last couple of weeks have been interesting and will continue to be so as we move into the end of the year. The dust won't be settling for a little while, so we need to turn our focus to our families, what's left of our friends, and decide how we'll move forward. As promised, throughout this past season, I've had more guests on the show than ever before. I spoke with the folks at Eye Opener Society, where we discussed food, having a strong mindset, and giving oneself grace in motherhood. I always stress the importance of mindset because your brain is the most important tool in any situation. Keeping calm and having a plan will serve you incredibly well moving forward. People are going to test your anger management skills like never before. You may find yourself in situations you never thought you would be in as food and other goods become more expensive. The folks who didn't plan and were not prepared will be stressed out and angry. If you've been following along and have implemented any of the things I've tried to teach you, you're in a much better position than these people who are all of a sudden going to find themselves short of basic necessities and either can't afford them or can't obtain them due to shortages. You have to keep your wits about you, have your head on a swivel, and hone your situational awareness. I still believe that there will be violence as certain groups become more emboldened and attack others, believing there will be no repercussions for them. Actually, it's already happening. If you know that you're the type to be easily stressed, made angry, or easily panicked, these are all things you need to work on now. Being able to control your emotions will see you through many difficult situations. Staying neutral and keeping a cool head may also give you a way out of intense situations. Even though self-defense is important, sometimes the best defense is walking away. You need to be in the proper headspace to understand when that is called for and not cave into your most basic knee-jerk reactions, no matter how hard you're gaslit or trying to be goaded into something that may cost you more than your job. Trinity Training Complex had its first expo this past October, and I spoke with Bob, one of the owners, and we discussed gun ownership and training. I had a great time at the expo held at its Staten Island, New York location, which had different workshops from professionals in the self-defense world. I did discuss self-defense in the episode, Is It Open Season on Women? How to Stay Safe During the Season of the Incel. Incels like Nick Fuentes are super excited because they feel that they are closer than ever to having control over women. These men, who couldn't get a woman otherwise because of their unpleasant personalities and viewpoints, believe that stripping away as much of women's rights as possible will guarantee them the woman they can't get on their own. They're taunting women and girls online, in public, and at schools with, "Your body, my choice." The threats that they're making are gross, and their desperation is dangerous. So I advised making weapons out of everyday items you already have in your home or on you when you're walking in the street. Taking up some form of martial arts will help build strength, confidence, and awareness. And, as I also mentioned, firearms. I acknowledge that gun ownership is not for everyone, but for those of us who feel that these days it's a necessity, I provided some tips on how to make a gun part of your self-defense plan. The bottom line, as women, we've always been vulnerable to attack. A woman is physically attacked every 9 seconds in this country, which is insane. We need to be more vigilant than ever and not be sucked into any false sense of security. There is no security anymore. And if you are submissive, single mom, solo female, you may not only have yourself to worry about, but you may also have children that you need to keep safe. This is not the time to stick your fingers in your ears and go la 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 and act as though it won't happen to you. Because the truth is, you hope it won't happen to you. People who are predators are going to look for folks who refuse to look reality in the eye and make the proper adjustments because they'll correctly see your vulnerability. If you don't want to be a statistic, if you don't want your child to be a statistic, your first line of defense is being aware and taking responsibility for yourself and those who are counting on you. So plan accordingly. I also interviewed Shonda Sinclair, and she discussed living the van life. She advised on the pluses, the minuses, and all the details one would need to know if they're considering van life, or, due to circumstances, may not have a choice. I supplemented this interview with a blog that contained information, tips, and relevant links. It seems like a simple choice, but it's much more involved than you think. If living a mobile life appeals to you, or you may not have a choice, then listen to both parts of the interview and check out the blog at urbanladyprepper.com. It'll help you decide if that choice is right for you. As mentioned earlier, these topics are relevant to life right now and definitely going into the future. What will be very important in using your mind is to be aware of various scams that target single women. In the episode, Shielding Your Heart from the Curse of Cuffing Season, I remind you that single life can be lonely, and we may long for past days when we had someone to cuddle up with. However, we have to be very careful not to let our guard down and end up being a victim of a catfish, a fake sugar daddy, or a hobosexual, which is a guy that says and does all the right things the other guys won't, just to have a roof over their head. Many of us women have been raised to believe that we need to have a man, or we know that having two incomes makes life much easier. But if we don't utilize our best discretion, we may end up in a bad situation if we end up being scammed out of our money, or worse, end up having a man under our roof who's a leech, or, even worse, abusive. The colder months are when we're all feeling nostalgic and emotional. We may feel the tug of loneliness during this time of year, but falling into the cuffing trend just to say you have someone is not the flex you think it is when it ends up a bad situation. One topic I've covered in my blog that I have yet to do a podcast on is on SAD, or Seasonal Affective Disorder. What used to be called the winter blues is actually a type of depression that sets in as the days get colder and shorter. The lack of sunlight affects some people so deeply it can impact their daily lives. It relates to preparedness in that we need to be sharp and aware, and SAD can affect that during the time of the year when we can be especially vulnerable, not just emotionally, but financially. Heating bills are coming, we may lose power, and winter storms can hamper our routines. If you feel that you're suffering from SAD, it's important to speak with your doctor. Something as simple as light therapy may help tremendously and is proven to be effective for those who let the darker days lead to darker thoughts. You need to be on your mental game to power through what will be a trying few months. Feel free to check my blog and see if the information and tips I hope will be useful to you. Again, if you really believe this is something that you suffer from, or even suspect in the littlest way, it's worth speaking to your doctor about it so you're able to be in the right mindset to deal with whatever comes. You don't want to be overwhelmed with feelings that can be avoided. Another topic that I addressed and am passionate about is the rise of AI and the threat of the fembot. I also addressed this issue a little bit in an earlier podcast because we must grasp how much it will change life as we know it. My concern remains that many of my SimSIF's jobs are administrative, and these will be the first jobs to go. AI is already taking over various administrative tasks, and I reiterate that it won't take long before employers realize that an AI secretary is cheaper and makes fewer mistakes. Will you be able to ride out unemployment should you lose your job? Can you compete in the job market with something else other than paper pushing? Are you willing to take courses to become more computer literate on the back end, such as programming, robotics, network administration, etc., to stay ahead of obsolescence? Don't believe it won't happen to you. Even if it may not be an immediate concern, it's coming. Now is the time to look into opportunities that often don't require a degree now to be prepared and ahead of the curve before everyone else begins to do the same thing when they realize their vulnerability in the job market. On the lighter side, many of the incels that are mad we're not settling for them have been threatening to get a fembot to replace us. They were not getting the response they wanted when we told them we didn't care, and if the fembot did household chores, we wanted one too. One of the biggest issues that single men and women face is unrealistic expectations on both sides. What's more difficult for women is that too many men want the 1950s life, but they can't afford it. However, they still want that 50s wife without acknowledging or caring that we have to work too, and that we have 0% interest in working full time, doing all the housework, taking care of the kids, and taking care of a man who's not contributing other than 50% of the home expenses, if that. Add to that, too many men, especially the younger generation, have been raised on pornography. This has given them unrealistic expectations of what real women look like and sexuality, especially female sexuality. They seek the perfection that they've been trained to like in porn stars and believe that certain porn storylines are real. They pine over anime characters and video game characters, which are cartoons of women, and are disappointed when real women don't live up to those expectations. When fembots do become a thing that these middling men can afford, they're better off with them. Real women know that at the end of the day, they would never live up to the expectations of these men who want way more than they give. They want a Stepford wife they can't afford and not a partner. Again, we need not get so desperate that we endure the presence of a man like that. We must be patient and wait for the man who understands being a partner, that makes us feel safe, helps to provide or mostly provides financial security, and cares for our well-being and our hopes and dreams for our children. The angry men that are out there, especially the ones with microphones making crappy podcasts, fail to understand that a woman will be at her most feminine when she gets a man who does all those things. We soften and expose ourselves at our most vulnerable so the man we trust will take care of us in all ways, not just financially. Many of us single women are viewed as aggressive and masculine because right now we have to be. Those are the traits that we need to survive in this world. Once we're with a man who provides those things and makes us feel safe and cared for, we can drop that aspect we've adopted out of necessity and be the soft, feminine woman for the man who won't treat us just as a maid, a piece of property, or a baby maker of children they're not really interested in or care about raising. Another episode was when climate change leads to an address change. Some insist that global warming is not a thing and that climate change is not happening. But everyone must acknowledge the extreme weather we're witnessing and how weather and geological events that haven't happened in certain areas are now occurring. Flooding is becoming more common, and drought and wildfires are happening right now, impacting everything from the environment to homes and our food supply. In 2024, there's been 11 hurricanes, 5 of which have become major ones. As of this podcast, wildfires in the United States have burned over 8 million acres and claimed about 50 homes. The cost of the 5 major flooding events and other less destructive floods is estimated to be between $180 billion and almost $500 billion. That's billion with a B. And these events are expected to increase. So continue the denials at your peril. In the meantime, those who understand its impacts have considered moving from disaster-prone areas to more stable ones. Of course, no area is immune from natural disasters because, again, events that haven't happened in certain areas are happening now, such as earthquakes in New Jersey and wildfires in New York. However, some areas are less prone to the events, less susceptible to flooding, and less affected by drought. Many people who live in hurricane-prone areas, such as the coastal regions of the U.S., have considered moving to a less disaster-prone part of the country. Unfortunately, some folks have been displaced by these natural disasters. They've had to decide whether they wish to return and risk another home and life-threatening event, or if they should just move to another location, as many had to do after Hurricane Katrina. I provided information about where to start if you're considering moving. If you're thinking about any big life changes, such as a move, now's the time to do it, or at least put them in motion before any drastic changes are made after the new year. One of the things I've addressed in my newsletter is the importance of planning your garden for next year. Whether you only have room on a terrace or a plot of land you can devote to growing food, if you have ever thought of doing it, now is the time. Food prices will increase or even skyrocket, and much of that will be on produce. Even if you start slowly by getting one of those grow kits and getting familiar with growing at least some of your food, it will help your budget. If you haven't signed up for my newsletter, please visit my website at urbanladyprepper.com. I include information that often isn't on the podcast or blog. And yes, it really is only once a week. I know we get a lot of junk mail in our email boxes these days, but I'm sure you'll find mine useful and informative. I include news that might not be widely reported, tips, food information, and more. I realize you're probably listening to this while driving or folding your laundry, but next time you're at your computer, give it a look. Next week is Thanksgiving. And if you thought that holiday family gatherings were awkward before, whoo boy, this year's gonna be a doozy. Establish your boundaries now to avoid screaming matches, thrown turkeys, and maybe even a fist fight or two. Protect the peace. Protect your peace, even if that means disinviting that uncle who has to stir up some shizzle every year. This is definitely the year to tell them to stay home so you can keep some joy in a season that will be chilly in more ways than one. Thanks for listening. Podcasts can be difficult to produce when life is lifing, and even tougher to remain consistent. So thank you to those who follow me either through my podcast or my socials. I appreciate your loyalty and patience and hope to continue producing even more content. I may start doing live videos next season instead of just audio. Still working on that right now, just trying to catch up and get on the other side of the curveball life sent me recently. Stay safe, everyone. Until next time, this is the Urban Lady Prepper signing off. I hope that I've given you some things to think about as you go through the upcoming week. I upload a new podcast every Saturday evening, U.S. Eastern Standard Time. Visit my website, urbanladyprepper.com, where I post a new blog every Wednesday and Friday. While there, sign up for my weekly newsletter, which contains information that usually isn't on the podcast or website, and share your support with a donation or buy some Urban Lady Prepper gear. It helps me continue to grow and provide even more content. Join me on the socials. I look forward to hearing from you. Ladies, stay safe, stay sharp, and be ready.
You can't live